want to meet these wonderful Year 7 students. Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm sure I'm familiar to all of you because we all met up. Where did we meet? Upworld. Okay, great. One of the stories we're showing today is actually related to Mount Puro. So let me just enable the screen. And is it working? Okay. Alright, so maybe just to set the stage, I will give you 3 stories. So 3, right? Each of them will involve a lot of numbers. And perhaps the one thing that I'd like you to remember is that if people do not understand things, they generally don't care about it. Right? If you don't understand how vegetables are nutritious, then you won't care about vegetables. And so for today, the whole point is for you to be open so that hopefully you can start to understand a little more what's happening around us. And through your research, perhaps find out how much other people understand as well, right? And then help them move along that particular journey. Right? So we're familiar with climate change. We're experiencing it in real time. Right? One of the solutions they say is to plant trees. And in Mount Puro, we might have discussed this, but we've lost a lot of our primary rainforest. So these are trees that are 200 feet tall. They're as big as, it takes 7 people to hug them. So a lot of forest goes away. But what's the effect, right? One of the effects is that it gets hotter, right? It is hotter today than it was 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, right? But clearly, if you're waiting, just to give an example, if you're waiting for someone to pick you up here, I bet you're waiting in the shade of a building or under the shade of a tree. Literally, that's the temperature drop, right? So you can see here, road sample with temperature and without, with trees on top and without trees, right? BGC is a place with some trees, right? And so those places will probably be cooler, right? Apart from the temperature, the other thing that we probably encounter is clean air. Who here has asthma? Can you raise your hand? Anyone? Okay, thank you, hands down. Who here has someone in their family who has asthma? Raise your hand. There we go. Okay, so more than, about half, thank you. Right? When I was born, I had asthma as well. Clean air was an issue. So, hopefully this video did click. Okay, there we go.
Search Google Earth for China and you'll see this. But an unedited satellite photo might look more like this. That gray smudge is air pollution, and it's coming from Chinese cars, factories, and power plants. But it's not only here. In cities around the world, air pollution is a big problem. A majority of humans now live in cities, and that number is only going to rise, which means more cars, more factories, and more power plants. As officials explore options for fighting air pollution, there's one tool that's often overlooked: trees. Cities are centers of industry, but the resulting pollution is filling our lungs and making us sick. One major culprit is particulate matter. Airborne particles of dust, soot, and smoke that are released when we burn fossil fuels or kicked up during construction and farming. When we inhale them, they can cause asthma, and they can also enter our bloodstream to cause strokes and even death. Experts estimate that outdoor air pollution kills over 3 million people a year. And as cities grow, leaders are finding creative and often expensive solutions for the problem. In London, the mayor spent over £1 million spraying city streets with an adhesive that was supposed to glue pollutants to the road. And in the Netherlands, designers have created a giant air purifier they call a smog-free tower, which is cool, but there's another, simpler solution. A new report from the Nature Conservancy shows that planting trees can be a cost-effective way to improve public health, which they do in 2 ways. First, a tree removes particulate matter when polluted air flows through its branches. The particulate matter settles on the leaves, and when it rains, the dust is washed down the gutter so we don't inhale it. Second, trees cool temperatures by providing shade and releasing water through photosynthesis, which cools summer temperatures by about 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit. But there is a catch. Trees can only clean and cool the air within a close radius, about 100 feet, so city officials need to be careful where they plant. Officials can maximize pollution reduction by planting trees where population density and air pollution overlap. The Nature Conservancy report uses data from Washington, D.C. to create a map showing where planting trees will have the highest return on investment. And some trees work better than others. Trees with larger, stickier leaves, like maples and elms, are more effective, but they also need to be considered within a larger ecosystem. Compared to DC, many cities around the world have even more to gain from planting trees. This map shows where return on investment is highest for reducing particulate matter. With proper targeting, planting trees can be just as cost-effective as other strategies, like converting public transportation to use less diesel fuel. But there is one major limiting factor: water access. What might work in Boston will be less feasible in a city like Doha, Qatar, where water is a scarce resource. And on top of that, many mayors don't yet think of trees as a public health resource. Trees might not look like giant air filters, but that's exactly what they are. And the sooner we start thinking of them that way, the sooner the air we breathe might be cooler and cleaner in cities around the world.
Hello. So there's one line there that's interesting. They said mayors don't think the trees are connected to public health. And you know why? I'm willing to bet that when they were in school, they probably didn't study this. Right? And so that changes the dynamic. You don't know what you don't know. And that's why we're here today, so that we all know what we can do, right? So they mentioned it earlier, right? Trees can create something. This area where I'm standing in the photo, this is one of the sites that DSM supported. Mr. Hunt and Mr. King, if you know them, were some of the first ones to go. Mr. Guinness as well has been here already, right? And just to share, right, if you have asthma, it's pretty expensive, right? And not everyone can afford asthma. It will cost $11,000 throughout their lifetime. But how much does a tree cost? $6? $7? You could plant a couple of them around your house and you're good, right? So just to share, right? So what we're trying to do, actually what we have continued to do with British schools since 2017 is to connect you guys to communities where you can plan, right? This year, since you're year 7, you have Mad Week, right? And the photo above, where 1,000 mangroves were planted earlier this year, is one of the sites that you can go to in Lobo, Batangas. It's right across the very island passage, right? Mangroves are trees as well. They have a similar effect. And then the lower photo, where 30,000 trees were planted, that's Zambales. Unfortunately, it's still beyond the radius of our travel this year, right? So, things are getting planted. Right? What we want you also to think about, not just that, where does the particulate matter smoke come from, right? 1 liter of gas will produce about 1.25 kilograms of this dust, so to speak, that we might inhale, right? And we'd like you to take a crack at what solutions can you think of, right? In terms of making sure that your air is a bit cleaner, that your friend's air is a bit cleaner, right? So what I'll do now, because this is the end of story 1, right? What I'll do now is I'd like to give you all just 1 minute, talk to the 2 friends beside you, and I'd like you to think of what do you think you could do? Right? Just chat, okay? 1 minute starts now. Okay, last 15 seconds, then I'd like to ask for a volunteer to share. Anyone's interested? Electric cars, why is that? Less harmful gas. Okay, over there. Yes. what did you want to do with the factories? Okay, so yeah, they'd have to think of how to reduce. Yes. Right. Thank you for bringing that up because the two of you talk about energy, and as you will see, and you'll need math to kind of find out what's the best. Not all energy is created equal, right? One last, and then we'll move on to story 2. Go ahead. Speak louder, please. Sorry. So more trains, and the faster ones do like bullet trains to get across the country. Yeah, that is a good suggestion. Right? Okay, I'm happy to see that a lot of you have ideas. Hold on to them because you might use them in your next class. Right? But I want to move on to the second story, right? And the second story we're going to discuss is water, right? So, statistics, every 15 seconds, someone around the world dies due to lack of clean water. Right? So people have water, but sometimes they have to scrape water off dirty rivers or streams, right? Or maybe it looks clean, but there's bacteria inside, right? Thankfully, in the Philippines, it's not as rampant as it is in drier climates, right? But how many Filipinos do you think don't have access to clean water? If you think it's letter A, stand up. No. Letter B, stand up. Okay, thank you. And letter C, stand up. Oh, okay. Sit down. Thank you. Right. So yeah, I think you're correct. The answer is letter C. Yes, I got it right, but no, the number's too big. We have to remember, right? Clean water is an issue. You were all in Mount Puro last year. Did you know that, you remember that Mount Puro has a water system? Before that water system was installed, the number one sickness in that barangay was disease related to dirty water. But when they planted all those trees, the trees cleaned the water, and then they made the right facility, that number went down, right? So, we have a lot of Filipinos who don't have clean water, right? And so we start to ask different questions. Is our water clean? Do we have enough water? And where are we using our water, right? So for clean water, yummy, not clean. All right. You thought chicken joy. So clearly, humanity is not very good yet at keeping water clean. Right? We use a lot of disposable stuff. Things go into the bin, don't go into the bin, or sometimes they go into the bin, but whoever's managing the bin takes it out anyway to places like that. Right? We have issues now. And so a lot of our water is starting to get contaminated with different things that don't belong in our bodies. Right? Even salt, which is basically seawater that is dried up, you had it evaporate, already has samples of plastic. Right? And it is behavioral in nature. Right? So who here's been to Coffee Bean? Raise your hand. Okay, thank you. This is a Coffee Bean. This is in Makati City. And when I hung out here for the whole afternoon to work, I noticed that everyone I encircled used takeout cups when they all dined in. So there's a behavioral issue here. Why are you increasing the trash when you're just dining in anyway? It's a little different from the culture here at BSM where everyone's got a water bottle, where it's normal to drink from your own containers, right? So a conversation that we need to have with people who are serving all these takeout cups when we're dining in. Now, Mount Puro is in Sierra Madre, and the water in that area is generally cleaner. But that water drains into a lake called Laguna de Bay. Who here lives in Muntinlupa or Parañaque or Taguig? Raise your hand. Okay, if you live in those areas, then you're close to the lake, right? Laguna de Bay. You don't want to swim in it, right? You don't want to drink it, and I wouldn't want to eat the fish from it, right? Now, so the lake is dirty. A lot of houses in the mountainside use it as an open sewer for their homes. And then, of course, stuff in the river goes down into the lake. We got to talk to a water treatment company, and this is what they told us. If we were to clean water from the top of the mountain, where some dams are built, it would cost us 10 pesos per 1,000 liters, right, to clean. But if we have to do it in Laguna Lake, because it's so dirty, that number doubles. Probably even triples, depending on how dirty. And even if they clean it, I still wouldn't want to drink it. Right? Would you? No? Yeah? Well, some brave souls there, right? So anyway, but some people, we have the choice, but not everyone does, right? And so that's the story on clean water. Now, do we have enough water, right? Who here's experienced no water in their home for a whole day? Anyone? Okay, thank you. How did you shower? You didn't, right? So for some people, this is regular. And for some people, they don't have water for 7 days in a row. My cousin and I have a small hostel in a province called La Union, where there's a lot of surfing. And during the summer, because they chopped up most of the forest, actually all of the forest in the back, there's no water from the utilities company, and even the groundwater disappears. So sometimes you don't have water for 7 days. Can you imagine? 7 days, no water. You can't even wash your dishes. It's a complicated issue, right? Manila has that issue all the time, right? And it affects our day negatively, right? Some people say it's not raining enough. Some people say the dam's not big enough. Some people say we aren't harvesting water like Singapore. Singapore's pretty good at that, right? Most of us think that the dam is the system, right? But in reality, it's only part of that system, because the actual system is the forest that keeps the water for us, right? So one tree can hold as much as 2,000 liters of water in its trunk, in its roots, in its leaves combined, right? Some trees are better than others at holding water, so it depends, right? And they will release about 5% of that throughout the day. Right? So here's a sample. I'm not sure if I showed this to you in Mount Puro, but we'll look at it anyway. Right? Here's the system of water that we all benefit from. Right? Can I ask you, what's happening to the box on the left?
Muddy water is coming down. The top. There's clearer water coming. The bottom pipe.
Okay. One, water flows out the top pipe. The other, the water flows down the bottom pipe. One has coffee water, and the other has much clearer water, right? This is a flood management system. And, as we learned earlier, it is also an air cleaning system, right? And in the summer, mind you, this is the river, the stream, or the waterfalls that you enjoy, right? And so that is how our water system works, right? But we don't have a lot of it left, right? As you saw earlier. Right? This image in particular, what's important is this one. You see the salt water here and groundwater here. If there's water from the forest, the water goes down, and so the salt water from the sea can't come in, right? But once you lose a lot of stuff like that, that's because it keeps raining, right? So the water moves down into the ground, into the ocean. But once you lose the forest, the trees don't, there's no rain, and so what happens is salt water starts to come inside, right? And so for some people in islands, the water inland is already salty, even if it's groundwater, right? So that's another part of the system that we need to understand, right? Now, the Sierra Madre, which you can look at from the top of this building, just overlooking, right? It's 26,000 hectares worth of watershed, but only 5,000 has forest left. And that's why we do programs there, because it's something that affects us directly, flood. It's also something that will affect us directly in terms of water supply, right? And it's a nice vacation spot if we take care of it properly, right? So these are some of the ongoing issues that we have, right? Mountains in the area, losing a lot of their trees. Okay, and as a result, the dams that we have sometimes almost empty. This year, in June, the news was saying we're going to run out of water in the next 30 days. Thank God, well, not really thank God, 6 storms came in, one after the other. So we refilled the dam, but at what cost? We got slammed by very rainy weather, right? So, as prices rise, people will need to earn, and they turn to nature for survival. But sometimes they don't count what they take from nature, right? And a lot of people in the Philippines like to have a good barbecue. Who here likes barbecue? Yeah? Barbecue is best when it's served, it's cooked over charcoal. Unfortunately, a lot of the charcoal we have now is made by backyard charcoal makers who cut the tree but don't replace it, or who are not using a tree that continues to grow despite cutting, right? And so they kill a lot of trees. A charcoal maker can kill about 100 trees a month, right? And in this chart, because of the lack of trees, some of the rivers have less water. You saw the image earlier, right? Some of the rivers have lost 75% of their water over the last 50 years, right? And it gets a little bloody, right? So, pardon me for this one. When there's no water, there's drought. And when there's drought, farmers will not be able to grow crops. Maybe they can't grow rice, maybe they can't grow corn, maybe they can't grow their vegetables. And when that happens, of course, prices rise. That's how it affects us. But for them, there's no way to earn, right? And when a father cannot feed his kids, he gets pretty angry, right? And sometimes it leads to people thinking of violence, right? And we're showing this to you because part of the reason why south of the Philippines is perceived not safe, and there are places in the area that are not safe, is precisely because they have lost the water system that feeds their farms, that feeds their families, right? And so this knowledge that you're seeing now, we're making these connections, right? It's very powerful, right? But these are connections that you don't normally see. I'll give you one story. I have friends in one of your Mad Week sites in Lobo, Batangas. They live on top of a mountain, and they have rice terraces, beautiful rice terraces. 30 years ago, they had no problem with water, so they could plant rice 3 times a year. Because rice takes about 90 to 120 days. But then they start chopping trees, and then climate change comes in. Now, they're only planting twice a year. If they used to plant 3 times a year, and then now it's twice a year, by how much rice did they lose? Right? It's a lot. It's 1/3. That's 1/3 of your income, right? And so suddenly, the people below who used to rely on the rice from the top, oh, there isn't enough rice from the top. Now I have to buy outside. Right? Effects of it, right? So anyway, just that. Now, how we use our water is also important because we talked about supply, we talked about cleanliness, but usage is also important. So I've just made a very quick chart of things that you might be using. We all have, right? Definitely I have. 1 kilo of different things has different water resource requirement. right? Chicken, pork, beef, pair of jeans, plastic bottle, leather fuel, right? You need water for everything. Yeah, right? So again, just to drive the point home, and that's why perhaps in the decisions we all make, right? If there is a pending water crisis, it's not just about turning off the tap. It's also about understanding that maybe we can start reusing some of the things, or maybe we don't need to buy it yet, right? Or you can change the way we eat. Right? There are many things you can do to influence this, and again, understanding the mathematics behind the system is what will enable you to do that. Okay. So anyway, I know that was a lot. I'm going to give you again 1 minute to discuss with those around you, right? And this time, can you discuss what struck you the most in story 2? Okay? Again, what struck you the most in story 2? Okay? 1 minute starts now. Alright, can I have some volunteers? Yeah? Okay. Give you the mic this time, so everybody here.
Trees, plant one after you cut it. It also increased the drought and decreased water. It was a big difference to the world. The farmer bleeding, it was like, it looked really disgusting.
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't think I explained that photo enough, right? So just so that there's context to why that photo popped up. There was a drought in 2016. We didn't feel it here. It's more felt in Mindanao, the southern island, right? And so when drought came, a lot of the farmers, of course, crop failure, that's not first, right? When crop failure came, they went on to ask for help from their local government, right? I forget which town. So they went on the highway and said, we need help, we need food. Now in other towns, the mayors or the vice mayor said, okay, we get it. Here's some rice, here's some money, we'll tide you over for the next season. But in one town, there was no help. And so people got very angry and it became violent, right? And that's why if you're leading a certain area, it's important to understand how the weather affects the people in your area. Right? Because not everyone has that opportunity to survive a drought. Right? Definitely here we do, and that's why it's important for us to understand how others might have to go through that. Okay, so we have a little time left. I'll go through the last part, which is mangroves. Right? We have 500,000 hectares of mangroves, right? And around the world, only half are left. So it's a better story than the forest because we only had 3% forest left. For us now, we have half our mangroves left, right? But logging is still a challenge for it, and then you've also got people converting it into salt ponds or housing, etc. Right? And there's also a lot of water farming, what we call aquaculture, right? And sometimes the way they farm is they only put one species in that farm, right? And when you put only one species in that farm, that water ecosystem starts to degrade, just like you would in a farming system where there's only one plant, right? So you need the biodiversity to grow, right? And as mentioned earlier, charcoal is also an issue because mangrove wood in particular burns very long, and so it's very good for charcoal, right? But it also grows 3 times slower than the forest tree, right? And half our country uses charcoal for barbecue, right? Almost half. Okay. Anyway, one thing that mangroves do is it absorbs a lot of carbon, which can help cool our planet. Right? The mature ones can absorb 370 tons per hectare a year. Right? And in the Philippines, if we restore all our mangroves, I just did some of the math, it would be about 1 million tons a year. Right? Now, the beneficiaries of the mangroves and the people that live around them are the fisher folk. Right? And they are considered the poorest in the country because if there's a storm, they're not going out. But if there's a storm, a farmer can still harvest a little something, right? So their average in 2022 is about 170 pesos a day, right? So the interesting thing is that if you take care of your mangrove, it gives you fish, 450 kilos per hectare per year, right? Boys, can I have your attention, please? And we're missing out, basically, because we lost a lot of our mangroves. We've lost half. Okay? So if you've got 450 kilos a year, multiplied by the 250,000 hectares we're losing, then that's a lot of fish. Right? The other thing is that mangroves can also reduce storm surge, right? Or tidal waves, you might call it. So this video should communicate that well. Watch how the waves don't hit the shore at all because the mangrove root system just blocks everything. Right? One reason why we need to plant mangroves. So there is a what do you call it? Pretty much 90% reduction in wave strength, 90, right? One story from the community in Lobo, Batangas, which is on the mad week list. Before they planted mangroves, the lady was saying that flood was until here, in her village. After they planted 17 hectares, flood is now until here. Big difference. Still flooding, but now they are not at risk of dying because they can stand over it. So, now, the other interesting thing is, who here likes to eat fish? Good. Okay, we all. Now, the Philippines sold and consumed 4.34 metric tons of fish. But did you know that that's only 30% of what we actually caught? Right? I only found out about this last night when Mr. Gibbs and I had dinner with an entrepreneur in the fishing industry. And she told us about how fishermen are always at risk, right? They've got poor farmers. Again, plastic, we saw this earlier, it's dirty, right? And the plastic produced is an amazing amount, right? And the reason why plastic is important because if a coral has plastic that lands on it like this, it is 89% more likely to get sick. And when it gets sick, it stops producing fish. And corals will produce 1,000 kilos of fish per hectare per year, more than twice that of a mangrove, right? So if you want fish, don't pollute the ocean because the pollution kills the homes of the fish, right? And so what I did is, because we live in Metro Manila, I tried to calculate how much fish could Manila Bay, which is like this, produce if it was clean, right? This is my calculation. Right? I used data from the Smithsonian Museum about coral reefs. So Manila Bay, 2.9 million kilos. Pasig River would be about 17,000. Laguna de Bay, about 900,000. Right? These three bodies of water are connected. You can't clean one without cleaning the other. Because the Pasig goes up and down, depending on the time. Right? So, that's worth a lot of money. That's worth a lot of food. But we don't want to eat it because it's dirty. Right? And perhaps to close, right? Most fishermen can barely afford ice, right? And the main issue why we're losing the fish is because we can't refrigerate. After 2 hours, it spoils, right? And so, one entrepreneur is now creating solar ice plants that fit in a small container van so that fishermen can increase the lifespan of their fish by up to 20 hours because it's iced out, right? That's why you put things in an ice chest, literally. Right? And it has to be solar because not all the islands where fish grow have electricity. Right? And if we do that, if she succeeds, you can increase the number from 30% to up to 75%. And I believe it allows you to solve hunger in your country because right now, we're feeding about 15 million people a day worth of protein. If she gets it up to 70%, that's 37 million people a day worth of protein. Right? I can send you guys the numbers on that. And if you have 100% catch, then that's half the population. So anyway, that's a lot of numbers, but definitely the message I want to share with you is that the ocean is a valuable resource, right? And I hope that some of you can choose to explore it so that you understand through mathematics how it can solve potentially a lot of issues, right? So with that, I'll turn it over back to Chris.
Okay, first of all, before we do anything else, can we have a quick round of applause for Raf, who's come out of his way today? He doesn't have to be here, but he's turned up to launch this project. Okay, now, important stuff. So, first of all, right, I want to just reiterate something about this project. We are not going to solve one of those problems in this room right now. These are huge problems that are global issues. What we are going to do is attempt to raise awareness of these problems, or one of these problems, in our local community. So to do that, you are going to first of all create a survey on one of these to find out what the current perception is, boys. Once we have understood